Yeah, this is the old house as we come up to it. The backside's fallen in. That used to be the kitchen there where that's now a big hole. So yeah, it wouldn't be safe to come up here and try to visit going inside or anything. But yeah, this is the home of Legends of Lacy Road, quite literally. Hello and welcome to W.R. Frady's Friday Night Frights. I'm your host, W.R. Frady, and I'd like to invite you to join us on a trip into the shadowy world of ghost stories, strange tales, and other spooky fun for the Halloween season or just when the spirit moves you. Tonight is a special night. This is a night that we will cover the Legends of Lacy Road from Lacy Road. Now tonight, I have with me a special guest, which you may remember from our graveyard episode. Everyone say hello to Clint. Clint.
Hey everybody, you guys are in for a special treat. This was like a second home to me growing up, and this is surreal being out here again.
Yes, it's actually, we've been walking around. You'll see clips of the place throughout the episode. However, we've been walking around getting clips and some footage of some of the places where the actual events of some of these stories took place. So, before we get started on Lacy Road, we're going to tell you a little bit about the place. Here we're walking down the old road from the house down to where the gate where Stacy and I was actually walking down and saw something that was standing up that growled at us, then dropped down onto all fours, hopped over the gate in a single bound, and bounded off into the woods and disappeared. And while the gate has been replaced, this was more like what the original gate would have looked like. But that was the gate that Stacy and I saw, what we saw with the creature that was standing up like a man at first. Then when we got close, about right around in here, is when it growled at us, dropped down on all fours, one bound went over that gate, and you can see about how tall this gate is. It bounded over that gate, went down and leapt off into the woods and vanished for the rest of the night, although it was still an uneasy night thereafter. Now, to discuss Lacy Road, we have to go back to 1979 when my family first moved in. That is when our ghost stories with this place actually begin. However, stories of this house predated our arrival here. And the old house which we are standing at had a reputation that was so intense that even the neighborhood kids would not come out here or come out the driveway to do trick-or-treating on Halloween. Even though they knew we were up here, they knew that, you know, they were familiar with us, there was still such a reputation that the kids would not come up trick-or-treating. What, you have anything to add?
Well, yeah, basically with that, they would go all out every year for Halloween, so it wasn't like, oh, they're a bunch of Scrooges that don't give out candy. It was more of a, you know, the omniscicity of the house and the, you know, always probably thinking it's a haunted house, so they wouldn't come up here, you know, but you were telling me you would decorate the yard for Halloween.
Oh yeah.
So it was more of the issue of, oh, I'm not going up there.
Oh yeah, it was.
It wasn't y'all personally.
This actually was like the house you see in all your ghost stories and your haunted and your ghost and your like spooky movies. This was the old house at the end of the road, literally.
Yeah,
quite literally.
Yeah, literally.
So yeah,
literally.
So with this brief introduction, now remember, we also see this place as home as much as we do remember the scary stories and things that took place in it. So without further ado, we're going to start with the Legends of Lacy Road. And mind you, there will be future trips back here as long as we're able. Our first story tonight takes place just through the door and up the stairs here from where we are. This was a night that one of our good friends, Stacy, came to stay. I had just gotten my Nintendo probably the Christmas before. It was like 7th or 8th grade for me. A little late for most people, but hey, I still got it. Anyway, what was started off to be a night of fun, pizza, games, and just all around good time turned out to be a night of pure horror because of the events that took place. Now, you will hear stories like this on podcasts, on haunted specials and series and stuff. This took place before I ever heard any of these extra stories. So, I call this story Called by No One. Now, Randy liked for his buddies to come by and stay the night, and it was always an open door. People were welcome to come in and stay. That's why most of my friends, most of his friends, pretty much enjoyed coming by and hanging out. It was like a second home to everyone. Well, this particular night, Stacy decided that he was wanting to come by and spend the night, and him and Randy would get some games and play Nintendo through the night, which was pretty much the main pastime. And so it was all arranged, and Stacy come over, and as was typical, Randy's family would order a pizza from an old place called the Pizza Express, if you remember that.
Horse Pizza Camp.
Oh yeah, yeah. Much preferred the Pizza Express. Anyway, but they would order the Express pizza, which was a large 25-inch pizza with 5 different toppings. I mean, and slices is bigger than your plate. And that was Randy and his friend's favorite pizza when everybody came by. So Randy's parents ordered pizza, and Stacy and them were up playing the Nintendo and such. Well, about the time the food came in, Randy's dad called them, let them know. They came down, they ate, and then after they were full with the pizza and soft drinks and snacks, they went right back upstairs and began playing the games that they had went and rented for the night. Stacy had played his games for a little while, and then him and Randy switched off and began playing other games. And by this time it was starting to get late in the night. And as Randy was playing, Stacy looked over to Randy and said, "Hey Randy, I think your dad's calling you." And you know, if they were being too loud or Randy's dad was going to bed, he would always come up, knock on the door or the wall, and say, "All right, boys, time to go to bed," and basically let us know. So when Stacy said that Randy's dad was calling, there was no question in it. And so Randy turned around and said, "Yeah, Pop, what you need?" And instead of Randy's dad's voice coming back to tell him it was time to go to bed, or he were getting ready to, we needed to go to sleep, this animalistic hiss came from behind the doors. And Randy and Stacy stopped, and they looked at one another and looked back at the door, unable to believe what they had just heard. So, They looked for a minute, and then when nothing else took place, they slowly kind of looked at each other like, what the hell was that?
It wasn't Pop. He ain't gonna do that.
No. And my dad, and Randy's dad was what that kind, he did not play those kind of games.
Nope. Not one.
Anyway, after a few minutes, they got back to playing the games, and there was an unspoken agreement between Randy and Stacy that while Randy was playing, Stacy would kind of watch the door and pay attention to what was going on. Well, just a few minutes after that, Randy's mom's voice called, and they stopped and they listened, and Randy looked at Stacy and said, all right, if Mom's calling me, if she really wants me, she'll come up the door and open it up and speak to us, which she was very well known to do. Well, when we didn't answer, it faded out. Next, it was Randy's brother. And then his older brother. Both of which one lived across the country, another lived several counties away. So there was no way that Randy's brothers had just come in for that moment. Bit by bit, systematically went through each and every one of Randy's family. But what really struck Randy and Stacy the most bizarre and terrifying was when Stacy and Randy were looking at one another from the Nintendo in the bed, and they were looking at one another, and Stacy's own voice comes from the doorway, the hallway, calling us out into the hallway. At that point, Stacy said he saw a shadow dart underneath the bed closest to the window. Not the window, but the door. My apologies. But closest to the door. The same door where the sounds were coming from. Stacy and Randy did not go to sleep that night until the sun peered over the horizon the next morning. And just to be clear, that was only one of a number of times when sleep wasn't found until the next morning. And for our next story, I will turn this over to Clint.
Hey everybody, I just got to say first off, this is surreal. You have no idea. This is my second home. This is my childhood here. So I'm looking around the whole time, kind of taking in the sights and the nostalgia. So what we've done now is flip the camera around, and we got a cool shot of this tree. It looks kind of creepy and gnarly looking. So the field is behind us now, and the house is in front of us here. So this story takes place in the field, and I've dubbed it The Hills Have Lights. So while it's not a ghost story per se, it's still what I would consider a Legends of Lacy Road, because it happened here on Lacy Road, and it was something paranormal you can't explain. So at the time, I had stayed the night with William, and we were actually, I would say camping, but we were basically just hanging out in the field all night. We never slept really. So we would stay up all night, basically just looking up at the sky, just talking about life in general. What if this, what if that? And this probably happened around 2, 3 in the morning, which is usually when everything crazy happens here. I'm no joke. So we were kind of sitting here, not so much in the middle of the field, and we were looking towards the horizon over here. And at the time, it looked like the sun was rising. It was that bright of a light. So I didn't think nothing of it. I didn't have a watch. So I was like, is it already time for morning? I don't think so. So then I looked, and it got brighter and brighter. And I thought it was just the stadium lights from the middle school, which is, as the crow flies, not too far. So there again, I didn't think nothing of it. But then, up from the horizon are these lights. And there's a bunch of lights, and they are bright. And it's raining now, but it's okay. And never will forget this. The light formation looked like two boomerangs in the front. Two triangles in the front. And behind were like just orbs, like bright light orbs. So you have triangle, triangle, and then orbs behind it. And then it crests the tree line, and then it just goes parallel to the tree line slowly. But I'm telling you, this was so bright, I thought the sun was rising, except it wasn't like a golden light, it was more of a white light. So I'm staring at it, and I was like, is this really happening? And unfortunately, we didn't have these, so there's, we couldn't take a picture or post a video, so it's just word of mouth. Or just,
yeah, we're just going to run inside, grab the phone from the wall, come out, and hold it.
So you have to just, people there again, I've told this story, people think I'm crazy. It's just, unless you experience it, or somebody else experienced it, it's hard to talk about sometimes about being labeled as a Looney Tune. So I'm watching this, and it took forever. They just calmly went across the horizon. So then fast forward probably, it wasn't too long. I was watching Unsolved Mysteries, or I was going through a Time Life book about UFOs. I can't remember which one. And there was a drawing that somebody that experienced something similar, apparently, they had drawn out this pattern of lights that they saw. And I looked at it, and I was like blown away. I said, well, I'm not crazy. If I'm crazy, there's two of us in the world, because this person experienced the same thing. So while this isn't a ghost story or, a demon or nothing like that, this is still what I think is a good Legends of Lacy Road, because it's something you can't explain, and it happened right here on Lacy Road. And like I say, this is just completely surreal. I know I'm going to say that a bunch, but y'all don't know. You've been out here a time or two since you've left, but I haven't been out here in probably since y'all were living here back in the day.
Yeah, last time I was here was when I brought Brandon up to let him see where I grew up.
But I haven't been out here in, 28 years maybe. So this is wild to come back and experience this and be here on the grounds of where all these stories take place.
All right. I hope you enjoyed that brief story from Clint about one of his experiences out in the field. Our next story, and I say our next story, comes from this very same field where we used to stay. Like we said, we did kind of camp out, even though it was more or less hanging out in the field most of the time, looking at the stars. And then if we did fall asleep, by that time the dew was falling, and it was so cold that we were like getting up, going back inside just so we could get warm again.
And if we slept, it was like he said in his previous story, you watch, I'll sleep for about 30 minutes.
Yes.
And then I'll watch and you sleep. Very rarely do we both just sleep out there. Usually it was staying up all night.
And this is one of the stories, why. I call this, that which dwells in the field. But in this time, instead of it being me just telling the story, me and Clint, who both experienced this, are going to tell this story. See, Clint likes to come over and hang out. Like you heard him say, this was a second home.
Oh, a second home, totally. I was here all the time. I get off the school bus, go home, I'll come over here. Or I get off the bus with you.
Yeah, and as many times as he was there, he was here staying the night, especially during the summer. Because if we went sitting here, we were down in the woods, we were all over this place, playing games and so forth. Yes, we were nerds. Anyway, and we're proud of that, by the way. But the point being is there were many nights, especially summer nights, when we would stay out here in this field behind us. Well, this particular night, Clint and I were out here talking, And we were talking from girls to Nintendo games, especially Simon's Quest, because that was my big game of the time. Castlevania was my thing. It still is. But we would be sitting there talking, looking up the stars, looking at constellations, talking about UFOs, the unknown and stuff like that. Well, late in the night, long after my family had gone to sleep, and it was a full moon above. Actually, if I'm not mistaken correctly, the moon was about right up here, just close to the zenith. So it was one of those nights, and it was also one of those nights when the moon was shining so brightly that it was almost like you didn't need a flashlight, because it was almost like daylight out here. It was so bright.
Everything was bluish.
Yeah, and if you could see this place at night, there's no real street lights anywhere, like no street lights anywhere unless it's down that way. So there were no street lights in the area. So this would be completely dark, except for that moonlight that was coming down. And like I said, the moonlight shone like daylight. You want to add on?
Yeah, so basically, I'm not going to, you recall the story a whole lot better than I do. So basically, we're out here, and I'll kind of preface it and let him, he's a better storyteller. And so we were sitting out here, and then basically something catches our eye, and we see something, and, you know, we're kind of talking about it later on, and this is kind of the build up to why this is important, that both of us are telling the story, and why you can't explain that something happened, because we both saw something, and then the proof that we both saw the same thing is what he's going to go into now.
Yes, we were out here doing pretty much, we had some dogs out, would pretty much start barking and stuff, and especially back here when animals would move around behind the house and stuff, and we were talking and got up from the area. Now, this field at that time was a hay field, so the straw was actually so rough and sometimes so sharp it was hard to sleep, so we would get plywood from the thing and use as a bed. Okay, do that. So we would, and that's where we would set up our camp. But we had gotten up, come back here to see what the dogs were barking at, because there was always something crazy going on around here, especially after dark. But we got up, we come back, the dogs passed us because whatever they were barking at had run off, and we were kind of milling around and come back up and was getting ready to go down to our place where we had our stuff when Clint and I both saw something shambling in the lower end of the field. He saw it, I saw it, and we were talking about, you know, we didn't tell each other what we saw, but that we saw something.
And you could tell the look on our faces. I was like, "Did you see that?"
Yeah.
That's what our faces.
Yeah, it was like, and it was like, if you've watched those Ghost Adventures and stuff like that, they're like, "Did you see that?" Yeah, that's exactly what it was. And we were looking at each other going, "Did you see what I just saw?" And he was like, "If you saw it, if it's what I'm thinking of, yeah." So what we decided to do, because honestly, Clint will tell you, he was the skeptic.
Yep.
I mean, he was the skeptic. I mean, almost to the point that it would have to hit him in the face before he believed it.
Which sometimes it did.
But the point being is we come back in. We got our stuff and we went back in. Instead of sleeping after seeing something in the field,
thankfully.
we went inside.
He took the high road and said, "Yeah, let's go inside."
Yeah, we went inside. So when we went inside, we grabbed some drawing paper. He went on one side of my bedroom. I was on the other side. We both draw what we saw. And aside from just artistic differences, both of us drew the exact same tall, shadowy figure with the moonlight highlighting the back of it, that we both saw the same thing. It was, both pictures were exactly the same, save for the artistic differences. So we had not told each other what we had seen. We just knew that I saw something, he saw something. And in that same instant, while it was fresh, we drew what it was we saw. and both of us drew the same figure that dwells in that field. And that wasn't the only time we've ever seen it.
No, I wish you still had those pictures.
You and me both.
God.
Yes.
But that's how you prove stuff, because I mean, yeah, I could say, oh, I'm just going to mess with them, and oh, I saw something too, buddy. And well, okay, well, draw what you saw. Well, then I'm put on the spot to, oh, I'm going to make up some demon-looking thing, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
And I just have to guess on what I'm going to mess with them on, draw something. Well, that ain't going to happen. He's not going to draw something, and then me draw something, and it'd be the same. Now, he was a better artist at the time. You know, he was, you know, he could draw better. Mine was more crude and like, I don't know, his had more character to it, but it's still the overall shape. What it was the same.
Yeah. And the way it was positioned, the way it was walking, everything. Like I said, everything but the artistic differences were the same.
And I was like, yep. Saw something.
So, yeah.
As we look inside the old house, there is the staircase where my mother saw the dancing couple come down the stairs and then go down that long dark hallway and out the back door. This is also the same door that I'm standing beside that opened up when my cousin was sitting right there on the phone with his girlfriend and had something go walk right by him down the hallway and out the back door. Yeah, I can tell you of all the different stories that happened there. And then right down here about where my finger is pointing is where I walked through the hallway that night and had that cloaked figure that I described as having like a potato-shaped head with red burning eyes looking at me as I went across to my bedroom. So yeah, there is definitely some old stuff and some both good memories and some creepy memories that come from this place. Tell everybody hi in there.
All right, everybody, this next story takes place just over my shoulders here. You can see a little bit of daylight back here. This is on one side of the house.
Yeah, and the shadow moving around back here is me.
Yeah, it's not the ghost of the storm here, I tell you. So, William's house had a wood stove, and it wasn't uncommon. His dad, we called him Pop, would make us sometimes go out here and get wood, like little blocks of wood, like kindling, what I would call it, not so much firewood so much, but it would be stacked up out here at firewood. And on the side of the house, back here over our shoulder, will be a whole pile of kindling type of wood too. So it was real cold, so we were told to go out here and get more wood to fuel the wood stove. And by this time, the story we just told had taken place, as long as a whole other mess of stuff you can't explain had just happened.
Yeah.
So anytime, well, me personally, maybe not you so much, but me, we would have to go out here in the dark. I was kind of like, oh boy, here we go. Constantly looking over my shoulder. So it was always eerie walking out here in the dark, because like he said, no street lights. It's dark.
Actually, you're getting kind of an idea of that now.
Yeah, I mean, it was dark. You couldn't see in front of your face, which leads up to this story called the Growl. So we're walking out, the front door's right here for the house. We're walking out here off the steps, and we round the corner back here to this lighted area on the side of the house, and we're trying to gather up some firewood. But before that happened, we were just hanging out and talking, and we were as close as we are here. I mean, we were side by side, but it was so dark. Like, this looks dark. It was so dark, if William was here, I couldn't see him. I had to kind of do this, hey, where you at? And we would do that from time to time. Where you at? Man, where you standing at? You know, if I feel somebody, I was like, tell me that's you. I was like, please tell me that's you. So like he said, I was a skeptic. I was more like, well, we'll see. I believe it when I see it type deal. There's probably an explanation. But after spending my childhood here, there is no explanation rationally. So we're back here getting ready to get wood, and it was pitch quiet, pitch black and pitch quiet. And all of a sudden, I hear the strangest, loudest snarl / growl. It was like a breathy growl. It was like a and I remember at the time, sort of in a joking manner, being like, please tell me that was you, because what I heard was about waist level, like 2 feet in front of me, and I froze solid in my chair. I could not move. I was literally scared stiff. I know they use that phrase, but I literally couldn't move. I was like, please, God, tell me that was you. Of course, it wasn't him. And so we pretty much we didn't just take off running, because I don't know why, but in my head, that doesn't sound like the thing you do if there's a demon or something near you. So we tried to just calmly back up and go walk back into the house. So I know that's kind of a short story, but for me, that was one of the encounters here. I'm not going to say it traumatized me, but it stands out as one that really shook me to the core, where it's so dark you can't see their hand in front of your face, and then you hear like right in front of you, and it wasn't his dogs. I promise you, y'all gonna be like, well, didn't you say you had dogs in this previous story? No, it wasn't the dogs. I would be the guy to say it was, hog dog or
Yeah,
whatever the dogs were. They had like crazy names, but that was not a dog, trust me. This was something else. So we went back in the house and pretty much tried to wrap my head around it, and I couldn't. But later that night, I can promise you I didn't go outside.
All right. I hope you enjoyed that story about Clint with the growl. And as the other stories that we have been telling tonight are related, these are actual stories from the house where we are now standing at with it getting dark. So, that being said, my next story uses the same area because this is where this takes place. You see, I used to do my homework in the dining room area, especially in the winter when it was real cold. This house was, as you could tell with it being an old house, it was very drafty. When it got cold, it got cold.
Oh, yeah.
But a lot of the times my stuff would be done from writing to Dungeons and Dragons to drawing to playing games to whatever it was I was doing was often done there in the dining room. That being said, that dining room we had wood heat, and I would have to, as one of my chores, go out and get the wood in for the night that we needed to make sure that the fire stayed going and the house stayed warm. This story happens in the February of my 7th grade year, and pretty much I call the hand in the window. Randy was doing his homework in the dining room of the old house on Lacy Road when it was getting dark, and Randy's dad had gone to the local hunting club meeting, and his sister was living out of town in Valdez at the time. Well, as it was getting later, Randy's mother called from the living room and said, "Hey Randy, it's about time for you to get the wood in for the evening before it gets too late. And so, go ahead and go get that done, and that way you can get back in here and get back to your homework." So Randy got up made his way outside. Now, Randy's mother was sitting just in a chair on this other side of the living room, watching PM Magazine. Well, Randy came out, being a typical night, wasn't thinking anything of it. Walked around and started getting wood from the pile of wood that was getting wood that was on the side over here. Well, apparently at some point of the day, the upstairs window, the light was on where somebody had been in there at some point. And while Randy was gathering up wood, a motion caught his eye up in that window, and he stopped, and he looked, and as he did, this much of a disembodied hand goes right by the window. Well, Randy wasn't thinking ghosts or anything like that. He thought at that point that his mother had went upstairs for some reason. So when he come back in with an armload of wood, and his mother was sitting in the same place she had been sitting when he went out, Randy put down the wood and he come back in and said, Mom, was you just upstairs for any reason? And she goes, no, I've been sitting right here the entire time. Why? And then that's where Randy proceeded to tell her, well, while I was outside, I saw a movement upstairs, and when I looked, a hand went right by the window. So, as you'll see in some of the pictures and some of the footage, there's only one way up and one way down, in and out of that upstairs. And it would have been right by my mom sitting in that living room. So we grabbed a flashlight and everything, went upstairs to try to see who was upstairs. We searched from one side to another, all the rooms, and there was no one to be found upstairs. Now, fast forward several months when Brigetta was moving back into the house, and they were cleaning up that same room and tearing down the old wallpaper to get it ready to be painted. There on the western wall, in the middle of the wall itself, was a big bloody handprint beneath the old original wallpaper. So what stories come from that? No one else would know, except for a few people that experienced other hand-related things from people, from being grabbed to being scratched to having things mess with them in that room. But those are stories for another time. Yeah, that's the old window where the hand in the window took place. This is where the pile was of the wood. And that wraps up this visit to Lacy Road. If time and the powers that be allow, we will be back for future episodes and future seasons, because this is always a great place to come back to reflect on what made us into who we are, including me into the writer and storyteller that I have become. And and it has been an impact on all of our lives. So, as you can see, looking around at it, it is getting completely dark. Matter of fact, I just disappeared from that side when Clint stepped in front of the light.
It is dark.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just going to do this just for a minute.
Yep. So this will give you an idea of just how dark it is in here.
Dark.
So, yeah. So, with that being said, I'd like to thank you for joining us here on Lacy Road for Legends of Lacy Road and for W.R. Frady's Friday Night Frights. I hope to see you on our next episode, which is the big Halloween episode, that will wrap up this season. And I would like to thank each and every one of you for being a part of this, for making this series possible. And I will see you then. Clint?
We will see you in the shadows. Hate to steal your line, but it's appropriate to not because
we are in the shadows.
Yep.
And also remember, if you hear a voice in the dark calling your name and you know it's not somebody you know, or if it is someone you know and you know they shouldn't be around, don't answer. Matter of fact, don't answer even if you do know the person until you're certain that is exactly who is calling you. And again, I'd like to thank you. Have a good evening. See you in the shadows. Thank you.
While filming this particular scene for the footage to use in this episode, we later found that in the upper left window, we had managed to capture something at the last moment. We'll show you that picture now.